As a long day draws to a close, each of us carries many heavy things in our hearts. Perhaps it's the pressure of unfinished work, financial worries, sadness in relationships, or simply an unnamed fatigue that we cannot express in words. Many times we lie down in bed, but our minds race with thoughts, remembering yesterday's events and worrying about tomorrow. It is in these moments that we truly see a truth. The body wants to rest, but the mind finds no peace, and the sleep meant for recovery becomes a weary struggle. Perhaps you, too, have wondered why you live in this spiral, where the more you try, the more anxious you become. The Buddha once taught that suffering is an inevitable part of life. We suffer because we desire things that don't go our way, because we cling to what has passed, or fear what has not yet come. But if we let our minds remain in such a state of turmoil, we only make things difficult for ourselves. Instead, evening is the time when we can learn to stop, take a deep breath, release the worries accumulated throughout the day, and allow our minds to return to the present moment. Listening to the Buddha's teachings in the evening is not merely receiving the Dharma, it is also a way to comfort the soul. Each saying, each scripture, is like a cool breeze blowing into our restless and agitated hearts. It reminds us that everything in life is impermanent. Joy and sorrow will also pass. Only mindfulness remains with us. When you let that voice enter your heart, your worries naturally subside, just as a boiling pot of water gradually calms down when cool water is added, slowly returning to peace. In the evening, before closing your eyes, allow yourself to sit quietly for a few minutes, listening to those profound teachings as if a dear friend were sharing them. See each word, each sound, as a small lamp lit in the darkness, illuminating the obscure corners of your soul. No matter how many failures or sorrows you have experienced today, right now, you still have the right to choose peace and lightness for yourself. You can try to imagine if each night before sleeping, we were to spend a few minutes letting go of all our busyness, not taking on more worries for tomorrow, just listening and returning to our breath, to our own presence. That sleep would be entirely different. It would not only be the sleep of the body, but also the rest of the mind. Tomorrow, upon waking, we would have more strength to face life with a more peaceful state of mind. So, when night falls, instead of letting chaotic thoughts take over your mind, listen to the Buddha's teachings like a refreshing stream, washing away all worldly dust. Let each scripture become a guiding light, leading you back to the peace that already exists within you. Only we have long forgotten it. In that moment of dwelling in the present, you will see that suffering is no longer an endless burden, but merely a passing cloud, after which the clear blue sky reappears. My dear friend, perhaps in daily life, we often find ourselves in awkward situations just because of pho, or dignity. These could be arguments on the street, back and forth words at work, or simply our ego flaring up when we feel disrespected in front of others. Many say that losing money isn't necessarily as painful as losing face, but in reality, does fiercely defending that face truly bring us happiness? Or does it sometimes become the cause of family rifts, strained friendships, and increased work stress? We can see that face inherently does not sustain us. It only inflates the ego, while the soul becomes increasingly heavy. In the Buddhist teachings, he often reminds us about the root of suffering. One of the main causes is attachment, which is an excessive clinging to the self and everything related to it. Face is essentially just an outer shell of that ego. When it's touched, the ego rises, and we want to defend it. But it is this stubbornness that causes us to fall into a spiral of arguments, competing to win, exchanging harsh words, only to end up losing harmony, and even inviting resentment. The Buddha once taught that words do not harm anyone. Only an attached mind causes us suffering. If we understand this, we will see that fiercely defending face is sometimes just holding on to an illusion, while losing the true peace of mind. There is a Buddhist parable about a merchant carrying a cup of hot water. When someone accidentally bumped into him, instead of letting go to avoid a severe burn, he tried to hold on tightly for fear of losing face in front of others. The consequence was that his hand was badly scalded and so painful that it required many days of treatment. This story, though simple, clearly reflects our psychology. Sometimes, out of fear of losing face, we cling tightly to things that only cause pain, just like the merchant clutching that cup of hot water. If we dare to let go, the pain will lessen. But if we try to hold on, we will suffer for a long time. To help you visualize this better, the Lin Ung Buddhist channel would like to recount an everyday story that everyone will surely find familiar. An Hung, a worker in Hanoi, was driving his young child home from school when his motorbike bumped into another man's. On the crowded street, the other man loudly blamed him, scolding him harshly. In that moment, An Hung felt his blood rush to his face, fearing that if he remained silent, he would be looked down upon, losing face in front of so many onlookers. He intended to argue back, even wanting to win to save his dignity. But then, turning his head, he saw his small son sitting behind him, his face startled, his eyes welling up with tears, worried for his father. An Hung suddenly softened. He realized that a minute of arguing would bring no good, but instead instill fear in his child's innocent soul. So he remained silent, gently apologized, and agreed to take responsibility for repairing the other man's bike. This unexpected happened. Seeing An Hung's patience and the trembling child behind him, the other man suddenly calmed down. From being aggressive, he became gentle. The two men shook hands in reconciliation, and then each continued on his way, no longer harboring resentment. If An Hung had insisted on arguing at that moment, perhaps a small incident would have escalated, even leading to violence. But because he knew how to bow his head, how to be patient, everything passed peacefully, as if there had never been a storm. From that story, we clearly see a lesson. Face does not sustain us. Only patience preserves peace. Bowing your head is not defeat, but a victory over the hot-headed ego within you. The Buddha once said that a victor of 1,000 armies on the battlefield is not equal to one who conquers himself. Indeed, defeating others is fleeting vanity, but conquering oneself brings lasting peace. In life, let's try to let go of what is called dignity so that our minds can be lighter. When facing conflict, instead of thinking about winning or losing, think about long-term peace. When someone of us offends you, instead of rushing to retaliate, take a deep breath. Remember that words can only hurt if we allow them to harm us. When you feel like defending your dignity by arguing, ask yourself, after all, what do I want to preserve? The truth or just my ego? And remember that an apology can sometimes resolve 10 parts of tension. A bow of the head can save a friendship, a family, a relationship. Practicing this is not easy because the ego within us is very strong. But each night, when sitting and listening to the Buddha's teachings, we can practice introspection, reviewing our actions during the day. Ask yourself, was there a time when, because of dignity, I hurt a loved one or lost joy? If so, gently forgive yourself and vow that tomorrow will be different. In this way, we gradually train our minds to be patient, to know how to step back, to see the wide sea and high sky. You can start with small things. When someone accidentally says something offensive to you, instead of reacting harshly, smile and let it go. When arguing with a loved one, try being silent once, and then choose to talk when both of you are calmer. When you feel the need to prove yourself to gain others' recognition, remember that true value lies not in the eyes of the world, but in the peace of your soul. The Lin Ung Buddhist channel wants to send you a simple yet profound message. Bowing your head is not defeat, but to see the path beneath your feet clearly. A person who knows how to bow their head is someone who knows where they are going, what they are holding on to, and what they are letting go of. And only then can we walk steadily, unburdened, my dear friend. As a day ends, many of us realize that our bodies are tired, but our minds are still filled with thoughts, with unnamed pressures. Some worry about unfinished work. Some are sad about reproaches within the family. Others are anxious about not having achieved what they desired. Modern life makes us chase too many things, from earning a living to the expectations others place on us. We often tell ourselves we must try harder, must push ourselves to prove we are not inferior to anyone. And from that, pressure grows, weighing heavily to the point of exhausting the soul. Many people, even after sitting down to eat or lying down to rest, still have their minds spinning with calculations. The body rests, but the mind finds no peace, and this vicious cycle continues indefinitely. The Buddha once taught that suffering has its causes, and one of the deep causes is that we cling too much. When the mind clings tightly to unnecessary things, we create burdens for ourselves. In the Four Noble Truths, he pointed out that the origin of suffering, dukkha samudaya, is attachment, and within that, greed, anger, and delusion are three fires that continuously burn humans. Pressure also arises from this. It's because we crave praise, fear others thinking we are inadequate, or because we do not accept the reality that our strength and capabilities have limits. We forget that life is impermanent. If today's work is not finished, it can still continue tomorrow. But if health and peace are lost, they are difficult to regain. Just like dust adhering to a mirror, if we don't wipe it away, the image in the mirror will remain blurred. The soul is the same. If we keep holding on to pressure, joy, clarity, and serenity, we'll have no place to reside. There is a story about Ms. Lan, an accountant in a small company. She was always careful and a perfectionist, always wanting her work to be perfect in the eyes of her boss and colleagues. Whenever someone asked for help, she would always agree, fearing that if she refused, she would be seen as selfish or incompetent. Gradually, almost all the work in the department fell to her. At first, she thought that this would prove her capability and earn her more respect. But the result was the opposite. The pressure grew increasingly. She often stayed up late, suffered from insomnia, and her mind was so tense that she had constant headaches. Her family repeatedly advised her to rest, but she couldn't stop because of the fear of losing face and the desire for praise. One day, her health collapsed, and she had to be hospitalized due to exhaustion. During her recovery, she had the opportunity to attend a short meditation retreat. There, she was guided on how to breathe slowly and deeply, to listen to herself instead of running after others. She learned to say no gently but firmly. She understood that true recognition does not come from shouldering everyone else's burdens, but from living authentically with oneself. From then on, she began to release some of her burdens, learned to divide work reasonably, and made time to rest and care for herself. The miraculous thing was that when she changed, her colleagues not only didn't look down on her, but respected her more. They saw in her calmness, clarity, and balance. Ms. Lan's story is a reflection of many of us. Sometimes we think that taking on many tasks is responsibility, is capability, but in reality, it's just adding more shackles to ourselves. The Buddha once advised, contemplate to see the true nature of things. Whenever pressure arises, we should ask ourselves, is this truly necessary? Is it worth sacrificing my health and peace? Many times, just a slow breath, a gentle letting go, will make our hearts feel completely different. Like a full cup of water, if you keep adding more, it will spill over. But if you agree to pour some out, the water will settle and become clear, no longer cloudy. To practice letting go of pressure, you can start by sitting down, taking a deep breath, and then exhaling slowly. When you inhale, be aware that you are bringing fresh energy into your body. When you exhale, imagine that all weariness and worries are leaving with your breath. In the evening, just a few minutes like this will make you feel the difference. Additionally, practice saying no when necessary. Refusing is not selfishness, but knowing how to preserve your own health and soul so that you can continue to help others more sustainably. Remember that no one can carry your life's burdens entirely for you, but you can absolutely choose to carry them lightly. You can also adopt a different perspective when facing pressure. Instead of seeing it as a burden, see it as a lesson. When you dare to relax, you will see that what seemed overwhelming today may tomorrow be just a small memory. Life is short. If we keep bending over under pressure, when we look back, we will regret not having lived fully, not having spent time on truly important things like family, loved ones, and inner peace. Pressure is inherently a part of life, but it only becomes a burden when we cling too tightly. Practice letting go, sharing, and breathing to see that the soul can become much lighter. A deep breath, a nod of contentment, a firm shake of the head at unnecessary things, all are ways to reduce pressure. And when the mind is at peace, everything naturally becomes clear. Letting go of pressure does not mean abandoning or being irresponsible, but knowing how to choose a harmonious way of life, not letting the mind be buried by unnecessary things. Just like wiping dust from a mirror, we don't break the mirror, but only make it shine clearly again. The mind is the same. When cleaned, it will reflect the inherent light of peace, Remember, everyone carries burdens in life, but pressure only becomes heavy when we cling to it. Knowing how to let go will lighten the mind, bring peace to life, and at night, your sleep will become a sweet refuge for both body and mind. Have you ever sat alone on a quiet evening and allowed memories to flood back? Old stories that seemed to have long been dormant reawaken, making your heart ache once more. Perhaps it was a past love, a broken marriage, a past mistake, or an opportunity you missed. You wonder why you didn't do things differently, why you didn't hold on to what was once precious, only to linger in unending regret. In truth, this is not just your story, but the story of many of us. Humans have a habit of looking back, living in memories, in emotional wounds, and allowing the past to hold them captive. But the more we cling to what is past, the more we lose the opportunity to live fully in the present, where true happiness resides. In Buddhist teachings, there is a simple yet profound lesson. The past is gone and cannot be held. The future has not arrived and cannot be grasped. Yet, most of us wander in these two realms. We regret the past, clinging to past sufferings, or we imagine and worry about a future that does not yet exist. Because of this, we miss the present moment, miss the life unfolding right in each breath, each smile, each step. It's like someone walking through a field, endlessly searching for the most perfect blade of grass, unaware that right at their feet are countless, lush, beautiful, and precious blades of grass. That person keeps walking, keeps searching, ultimately never finding the blade of grass they desire, and eventually failing to see the beauty present right beside them. The Lin Buddhist channel wants to tell you a story about a man named Tom. Tom once had a happy family, a kind wife, well-behaved children, and a stable job. However, due to misunderstandings, ego, and hot temper, his marriage broke down, his wife and he divorced, and his young daughter lived with him. In the days that followed, he was like a lost soul. Every day, he recounted the old story, blaming fate, blaming life's injustice, and blaming himself. He drowned in alcohol, in long nights of insomnia, in unanswered questions. That suffering was like a wound that never healed, and he thought he would never find peace again in this life. One afternoon, wandering aimlessly, he walked into a small temple on the outskirts of the city. There, he accidentally heard the abbot giving a dharma talk. The teacher said, "The past is gone, cannot be held. The future has not arrived, cannot be grasped. Humans suffer because they cling to things that are no longer there, keep dreaming about things that have not yet come, and forget that the present is the only reality we have." Those words were like a drop of water seeping into the dry earth of his soul. He fell silent, and tears streamed down his face. For the first time, he realized that he had allowed the past to bind him, preventing himself from moving forward. From that day, Tom began to change, little by little. Every morning, he spent time walking around the park, looking at the trees, listening to the birds sing. He started planting a few small pots of flowers in his yard, caring for them daily, watering them, and feeling his heart gradually lighten. More importantly, he learned to spend time with his daughter, cooking, talking, and playing together. Although his family was no longer complete as before, he realized that happiness still existed in the moments of seeing his daughter smile. The past, with its sufferings, no longer had the power to control him. What remained was the present, warm and peaceful from within. Antam's story is also a reminder for all of us. Clinging to the past only makes us miss the happiness that is present. Happiness is not in what has passed, nor is it in a future vision that has not yet arrived. True happiness is always here and now. We just need to stop for a moment, open our hearts to realize that life is unfolding, and happiness will immediately be present. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment. We hurt because we want to cling to what is lost or resist what is disagreeable. But life is inherently impermanent. All things and all people change over time. Nothing can be held forever in our hands, not even the things we love most. Therefore, instead of complaining, instead of regretting, let's learn to accept. Acceptance does not mean giving up, but understanding that everything has its own karmic conditions. When one door closes, perhaps another is opening. We just haven't seen it yet. Practicing letting go of the past is also a form of daily practice. Whenever painful memories flood back, practice breathing slowly and deeply. And tell yourself that the past has passed. It only remains in memory and cannot hurt you again if you don't allow it to. You can write down the things that weigh on your heart on a piece of paper, then gently fold it. Place it on an altar or in a quiet corner, as if you have entrusted it to time. You can also find a new activity to nourish your soul, such as reading, meditating, planting trees, or simply listening to your own breath. When your mind is anchored in the present, the past will gradually lose its power. Many people often ask, how can one forget the past when it is so painful? In reality, letting go does not mean completely forgetting. Letting go is accepting that it happened, that it has become a part of your life, and that thanks to it, you have grown and understood life better. The past is no longer a burden, but a lesson. When you look at it with a calm mind, you will see that even in losses, there are seeds of new beginnings. Just like a harsh winter, which seems severe, yet nourishes the green shoots for spring to bloom. Have you noticed that people who live joyfully and peacefully are those who appreciate the present? They are not overly concerned with what they have lost, nor overly anxious about the future. They know how to enjoy a simple meal with family, how to laugh when hearing children play, how to take a fresh breath in the morning. These simple things are precisely the great happiness, the inner peace that we have sought for so long. So tonight, before going to sleep, try to let go of the past in your heart. Don't let past events haunt your sleep. And don't carry resentment into tomorrow. Let your heart be as light as a leaf. Let each of the Buddha's teachings become a guiding light, leading you back to your inherent peace. True happiness is not far away. It is present right in this moment. Perhaps in life, all of us have experienced days when our souls felt heavy. Everything around us suddenly became gloomy, devoid of any vitality. These are the times when you wake up not wanting to get out of bed, looking at the work ahead only to feel discouraged, or simply an unintentional word from someone is enough to to hurt you all day. Negative thoughts are like dark clouds covering a clear sky, preventing the sunlight of joy from shining through. The most frightening thing is not external difficulties, but when our minds are covered by those dark clouds. When the mind is negative, wherever we look, we see sadness, injustice, and life feels heavy. A single raindrop can make us think that the whole sky is against us. In Buddhism, the Buddha once taught that the mind is the root of all suffering, as well as all peace. If our mind is bright, everything we see also appears bright. If our mind is dark, everything we see takes on a gloomy hue. This is the principle of cause and effect in action in daily life. Negative thoughts are the cause that creates painful feelings. When we sow these seeds in our minds, they will grow into a garden full of thorns, preventing us from walking lightly. Conversely, if we know how to sow seeds of joy and gratitude in our minds, life also becomes refreshing, like a blossoming flower garden. The Zen Buddhist channel recalls the story of Mrs. Mai, a vegetable seller at the market. Mrs. Mai is over 60 this year, frail, her back bent from years of carrying burdens to make a living. Every day, she has to wake up at 3 a.m., walk to the market. Carrying a basket of vegetables she grew herself in a small garden behind her house. Some days, the weather is beautiful. The vegetables are fresh and green. She sells out quickly and has money to provide for meals. But there are also days when it rains heavily. The vegetables are bruised and customers are scarce. She sits huddled in a corner of the market, looking at the wilting vegetables with sadness. At such times, others would complain about fate, blame the heavens, or return home in disappointment. But Mrs. Mai had a different way of thinking. She smiled and said, "When it rains, the soil becomes richer, and the next crop of vegetables will be healthier." The bruised vegetables she doesn't throw away, but brings home to feed her chickens, considering it compensation. She doesn't see it as a loss, but as a natural part of life. Because of this, she doesn't let rainy days weigh down her mind. If we look closely, we will see that life is like a lemon. A lemon itself has a sharp, sour taste. But if we add a little sugar, a little cool water, it becomes a sweet and refreshing lemonade on a summer afternoon. Events are not inherently negative or positive. It is our perspective that decides. If we only see the sourness, we will frown and reject it. But if we know how to mix it, that very sourness becomes the foundation for an unforgettable, delicious taste. Likewise, disagreeable things in life are not meant for us to suffer forever, but are opportunities for us to learn to see differently, for our minds to mature and appreciate the simple things around us. The Buddha taught in the Four Noble Truths that the cause of suffering is our attachment and mistaken thinking. When we look at life with a negative mind, we magnify suffering, forget joy, and then drown ourselves in a sea of sorrow. But the truth is that life always has two sides. Where there is darkness, there is also light. Where there are storms, there is also a rainbow. Nothing is entirely suffering, nor is anything entirely happiness. So, when we change our perspective, our minds immediately change. The Zen Buddhist channel once knew an office worker. Every day, she went to work complaining. She complained that there was too much work, colleagues were difficult, and the boss was harsh. She lived through a series of stressful days, always tired and discouraged. One day, after being harshly criticized by her boss, she sat crying in the break room. A colleague came to comfort her and said, "Even though work is tough, at least we have a job. We have a salary to support our children." While many people out there are unemployed, we can see this as pressure, or we can see it as an opportunity to learn, to grow. Hearing this, she suddenly brightened. From then on, instead of focusing on what she hated, she began to look at what she had, even in the same job. But when she changed her perspective, she felt lighter, gradually came to love her work, and lived more peacefully. If we allow negative thoughts to dominate, even small things turn into suffering. But if we know how to focus on the positive, even in suffering, we can find joy. The practice is very simple. Every day, try to find at least one thing to be grateful for. It could be a warm meal, a kind inquiry from a loved one, or simply the fact that today we are healthy enough to move around. When the mind is grateful, we will immediately see that life still holds many precious things. In meditation, there is a method called contemplation of the breath. When we inhale, we know we are inhaling. When we exhale, we know we are exhaling. Just by returning to the breath, we can stop the continuous flow of negative thoughts. The breath is the bridge that takes us from the dark clouds back to the clear sky. Try to spend a few minutes each evening before going to sleep, sitting quietly and breathing gently. When the mind is at peace, we will find that things that seemed heavy also become lighter. Another way to let go of negativity is to practice looking at things from multiple perspectives. For example, when someone says something harsh, instead of immediately getting angry, we can think that perhaps that person is also experiencing their own suffering, which is why they are acting that way. When we understand, we will resent less. Or when we encounter failure, instead of seeing it as an end, we can view it as a lesson to be more resilient next time. Every event has a positive side if we choose to look for it. Don't you see? This life is not perfect. There will be times when we face storms, and times when we see golden sunshine. There will be times when we are praised, and times when we are criticized. But if we let negativity overwhelm our minds, this whole life will be nothing but storms. Conversely, if we choose to look at the bright side, even when it rains, we can still be happy because the land is refreshed and the plants gain vitality. So tonight, before closing a long day, ask yourself, what positive things have I seen today? It could be a smile, a thank you, or simply the fact that you are still sitting here listening to the Buddha's teachings. That too is happiness. Remember that negative thoughts are like dark clouds covering the sun, but the sun is still there, still shining brightly. Just a gentle breeze blows, the clouds disperse, and the light shines through again. Likewise, happiness has always existed within us. It's just that it's obscured by negative thoughts. When we let go, that light will return, warming our entire heart. Choose even small joys to illuminate your soul. My dear friend, in life, perhaps all of us have, to some extent, experienced emotional wounds inflicted by others. It could be a harsh word that hurt us deeply. It could be a betrayal from someone we once trusted, or even a debt of gratitude or money that the other person deliberately forgot. If those memories could simply be forgotten, perhaps this world would be much less painful. However, suffering often does not come from what others have done to us, but from our holding on to those things in our minds. A physical wound will heal over time, but a wound in the soul, if nurtured by resentment, will deepen, weighing down our hearts. Our minds are never at peace with resentment, which is like a fire. When we hold it in our hearts with the intention of waiting for the day to take revenge, that fire does not burn anyone else, but burns our own heart first. The Buddha once taught that hatred can never be extinguished by hatred. Only compassion can dissolve hatred. This sounds simple, but in reality, it is an immense challenge for humans, because our ordinary minds are accustomed to dealing with things according to the law of cause and effect. Simply put, if someone hurts us, we must find a way to hurt them back. But upon closer reflection, we will realize that this very thought turns us into slaves to hatred. We live in the present day, yet our minds are always bound by what has passed. Today, the sky may be blue, the sun beautiful, our loved ones may be smiling, but we cannot fully enjoy it, because in our minds, a hidden corner is still gnawing at us with resentment. Isn't this like willingly handing over the key to our happiness to those who once hurt us? There is a story in the Buddhist scriptures that awakens us every time it is mentioned. The Buddha once compared resentment to holding a burning coal in one's hand. We hold it tightly with the intention of throwing it at the person who caused us pain. But while waiting for the opportunity to throw it, our own palm gets burned first. The other person may not be hurt, but we have suffered both physically and mentally. Therefore, forgiveness is not truly condoning another's wrongdoing, but liberation for oneself. The story of Mr. Loy will perhaps make you understand this more deeply. He was a kind and hard-working man. One time, out of compassion for a friend in need, he lent a significant amount of money to his close friend. But then, that friend disappeared without a trace, never returning the money. At first, Mr. Loy only thought his friend was having difficulties and would repay him soon. But year after year, the promise faded, and silence replaced the bond of friendship. Mr. Loy's disappointment gradually turned into resentment. Every night, when he closed his eyes, he thought about the lost money, about his betraying friend, and his heart boiled with anger. Resentment caused him insomnia, declining health, and a perpetually irritable mood. His family members repeatedly advised him to let it go. But he couldn't. He said that if he didn't get it back, he wouldn't be able to swallow this bitterness. Then, one day, in his weariness, he went to the temple to pray for peace. There, he heard the teacher's sermon. Holding on to hatred is no different from holding a burning coal, waiting for the day to throw it at someone else. But before you can throw it, your own hand will be burned. Those words were like a cool breeze seeping into his mind. He suddenly realized that for so many years, he was the one being burned by hatred, while his friend continued to live peacefully. After that service, he decided to forgive, not because he forgot the money, nor because he condoned the betrayal, but because he wanted his mind to be at peace. From that day on, he no longer brought up the old story. His heart felt much lighter. The miraculous thing was that not long after, the friend himself returned, apologized sincerely, and fully repaid the money. Mr. Loy smiled, not because he received the money back, but because he felt free from the day he learned to forgive. Through that story, we clearly see that forgiveness is the healing balm for ourselves. Without forgiveness, we live in the shackles of hatred. With forgiveness, we restore openness and serenity to our souls. The Buddha taught that in this life, everything that happens is within the law of karma. If someone does something wrong, they will bear the consequences sooner or later. We don't need to harbor hatred ourselves to wait until we see those consequences, because by doing so, we are allowing the karma of that person to bind our own lives. Instead, learn to let go and trust in karma. Some people will say that forgiveness is weakness, that it condones evildoers. But that is not so. Forgiveness does not mean that we agree with the wrong, but that we choose not to let that wrong continue to harm us. Forgiveness is the greatest courage because it requires us to overcome our selfish ego, to overcome our wounded pride, to preserve our own peace. We often think that by taking revenge, we will feel satisfied. But the truth is that after every retaliation, our hearts are never at peace. Instead, a new wave of hatred arises. Conversely, forgiveness opens a door to peace, where we are no longer obscured by the shadow of the past, overshadowing the present. So, how can we truly let go of resentment? First, we need to confront the truth that suffering is inherent in life. None of us can live without ever being hurt by others. Instead of seeing it as a personal misfortune, let's view it as an essential part of human karmic connections. Second, we need to cultivate compassion. Remember that the person who hurt us is actually just a victim of ignorance. They acted wrongly because they lacked wisdom, did not know how to love properly. If we hold on to resentment, we only sow more seeds of suffering. But if we choose to look at them with the eyes of compassion, we will feel our hearts open. Third, practice letting go with each breath. Whenever a painful memory returns, do not resist or nurture it, but breathe deeply. See it like a cloud passing across the sky of your consciousness. And then let it drift away. A very useful practice is each evening. Before going to sleep, close your eyes and silently recite the words, "May I be forgiven. May I know how to forgive others. May I live with a peaceful mind." This simple prayer is like a guiding light in the darkness, helping you gradually shed your burdens each day so that your heart can be more serene. Don't you see? Forgiveness is not a one-day or two-day affair, but it is the path that brings you back to your inherent peace. Remember, when we forgive, the first person to be liberated is ourselves. Don't let the seeds of resentment take root in your heart, because they will drain your joy of living. Give yourself the opportunity for peace, and give the other person the opportunity to change. Perhaps one day they will return, like Mr. Loy's friend, to apologize and make amends. But whether they return or not, you will have gained the most precious thing, a free soul. Letting go of resentment is giving peace back to your heart. In daily life, perhaps not infrequently, we feel our hearts constrained by calculation and comparison. Just a careless word from someone can make us angry all day. Just a small action that we deem disrespectful can make us remember it forever, leaving our hearts restless. Some people, because of a very small conflict, see friendships fracture, siblings become distant, and even families break apart. Some, clinging tightly to their ego, refuse to humble themselves and lose valuable relationships. We might think we are protecting our honor, upholding fairness. But in reality, the more narrow-minded we are, the heavier our hearts become, and the more suffering we experience. The Buddha taught that all human afflictions stem from attachment. When we clench our fist, even if we want to hold many things, we hold nothing. Only when the hand opens can we embrace the whole world. The human heart is the same. When the mind is narrow-minded, only wanting to win or lose, only holding on to grudges, we are like a clenched fist, ultimately receiving nothing but exhaustion. But when we open our hearts, practice tolerance and forgiveness, we will find our minds lightened and human connections strengthened. In Buddhist teachings, narrow-mindedness and selfishness are considered among the causes of suffering because they originate from ignorance, from an overly large ego. The ego always demands that others conform to its wishes, always comparing and evaluating. When we see someone doing better than us, we envy. When we see someone act against our wishes, we get angry. All these emotions draw us into an endless spiral of suffering. Conversely, compassion is the miraculous remedy that helps heal. With compassion, we see the suffering of others. We understand that they too are human and sometimes make mistakes or are weak. When we understand that, we can easily be tolerant and forgiving. And when we forgive, the first person to be liberated is ourselves. The Lin Buddhist channel recalls the story of Ms. Han and her neighbor. It's an everyday story, but it contains a profound lesson about compassion. Ms. Han was a kind woman, living harmoniously with her neighbors. However, her neighbor often spoke ill of her, even fabricating stories to slander her. Others who heard this were annoyed on Ms. Han's behalf, advising her to retaliate, to speak up to defend her honor. But Ms. Han chose silence. She just smiled and didn't hold grudges. Not only that, sometimes she would even bring some vegetables and fruits from her garden to her neighbor's house as a gift. Many people didn't understand, saying she was foolish, being slandered yet still being kind. She gently replied, "What's the point of being narrow-minded? Holding on to anger only makes me more tired." Then one day, that neighbor fell ill, and in a critical moment, no one was home. The first person to rush over and take her to the hospital was Ms. Han. That act deeply moved the neighbor. She realized that the previous misunderstandings were solely due to her own narrow-minded and selfish heart. From then on, the two became close, often visiting and helping each other. Everyone in the neighborhood admired the story, for thanks to Ms. Han's compassionate heart, a relationship born of resentment transformed into a beautiful friendship. Through this story, we clearly see that narrow-mindedness brings nothing but suffering. If Ms. Han had also chosen to retaliate, that relationship would have forever been filled with hatred, perhaps even extending from generation to generation. But thanks to compassion, all misunderstandings were resolved, and human connections grew stronger. Compassion does not diminish us. On the contrary, it makes our hearts larger and more resilient. In daily life, narrow-mindedness appears everywhere. At work, we feel unhappy when a colleague is praised. In the family, Sometimes just a disagreeable word can make us hold a grudge for a whole week. In society, just an unintentional glance can make us uncomfortable. All these are expressions of a narrow mind. If we keep nurturing it, our lives will become constricted, always feeling bound. But when we practice letting go, opening our hearts with compassion, we will feel lighter, our minds at peace, and joy will come naturally. A helpful practice is to send blessings to those who have hurt you. At first, you may find it difficult, even contrary to your true feelings, but be patient. Each night, before going to sleep, close your eyes and silently say, "May you be well, may your suffering lessen." When you do this many times, the seeds of compassion within you will sprout, and the seeds of narrow-mindedness and resentment will gradually disappear. In the Dhammapada, there is a verse, "Though one may conquer 1,000 times 1,000 men in battle, yet he is the noblest victor who conquers himself." Narrow-mindedness is one of the hardest battles we must overcome. Conquering narrow-mindedness brings us an invaluable treasure, an open, peaceful soul. You see, compassion is a virtue, a door that leads us to true peace. The more we forgive, the more our hearts open. Narrow-mindedness only increases our suffering, while compassion helps us live lightly and happily. Letting go of narrow-mindedness is opening up a vast sky in our hearts. My dear friend, perhaps on late nights, when work has temporarily ceased and the outside noise has quieted, you have sat alone and wondered, what exactly is happiness? Why do I keep getting tired of chasing money and status, of comparing gains and losses, wins and defeats? Why do I always feel like something is missing, always wanting more, and then never finding peace in my heart? Humans often live in the bottomless spiral of desires. Today, if they have a small house, they wish for a larger one. If they drive an ordinary car, they dream of sitting in a luxury car. Holding a freshly received paycheck, they feel it's not much, because compared to others, they are still lagging behind. The suffering is not in having little or much, but in never feeling enough in one's heart. When one doesn't feel enough, the heart constantly craves. The eyes always look outward, comparing with others, causing the soul to lose its peace. The Buddha once taught that contentment is true wealth. In Buddhist teachings, there is a beautiful term, trituk. Trike means to know. Tuk means enough. A person who knows enough has a treasure in their heart, no longer swayed by external circumstances. A person who lives with trituk is tien tuk, meaning that even with simple material conditions, they still feel content, not feeling inferior. And trituk is the greatest, daituk, wealth. Because that person possesses a kind of wealth that money cannot buy, inner peace. If we take the time to look deeply into the four noble truths that the Buddha taught, we will see that suffering largely originates from greed and attachment. Wanting more, wanting endlessly, wanting to surpass others, is the main reason humans plunge into the cycle of dissatisfaction and suffering. Impermanence teaches us that nothing lasts forever, neither material possessions nor fame. What is here today may be gone tomorrow. When we understand karma, we will see that everything we have today is the result of karmic causes we have sown. Nothing is accidental. Therefore, comparing ourselves to others is nothing but bringing suffering upon ourselves, because each person has their own karma, their own path. No one is exactly like another. The Lin Ung Buddhist channel recalls a story that you will surely see an image of yourself in. It is the story of a group of former students visiting their old teacher. The boys and girls of yesterday were now adults, working. Some had achieved status, others were still struggling. As they sat together, they began to complain about life, about work pressure, about comparing salaries and positions. Everyone felt they weren't enough, not worthy, not satisfied with the present. The teacher listened without interrupting. Then he gently poured coffee for everyone. On the table, he had many different types of cups: luxurious ceramic cups, clear glass cups, ordinary plastic cups. The students quickly chose the most beautiful cups, leaving only a few simple plastic ones. When the coffee was poured, the teacher looked around, smiled, and said, "Do you notice? Everyone chose the beautiful cups. No one wanted the ordinary ones. But what you need to drink is coffee, not the cup. Life is the same. Happiness is the flavor, the coffee, while fame, gain, and status are just the cups that hold it. If you keep focusing on the cup, you will forget the most important thing: enjoying the flavor of life." That story is simple, yet profound. In reality, in life, we are often like those students, constantly comparing the cup in our hand with the cups of others. We feel sad when others have nicer homes. We feel inferior when they have higher-paying jobs. We feel restless when they have more glamorous lives. But we don't realize that what we need to experience is not the outer shell, but the sweet flavor of our present life. Have you ever sat sipping a hot cup of tea or coffee in the early morning when everything is still peaceful? Just taking a breath, feeling its aroma, hearing the birds sing outside the window, seeing the morning sun. You already feel a small joy subtly weaving into your heart. That is trituk. We don't need to have a lot to feel happy. We just need to appreciate what we have, and the mind will be at peace, the heart lighter. A person who lives with trituk will no longer chase after fleeting fame. They know when to stop, know how to be content with the present. Instead of thinking, "I need more," they smile and say, "This is enough." When the mind is content, life will be content. When the heart is at peace, circumstances also feel peaceful. Conversely, if the heart always feels lacking, then even with a house full of wealth and high status, a person will still be unhappy. Practicing trituk in life is not something overly profound. It starts with the smallest things. Instead of complaining about your current job, be grateful that you still have work, that you have income to support yourself and your family. Instead of being sad about a small house, be grateful that you have a place to shelter from rain and sun. Instead of comparing your salary with colleagues, remind yourself that it is each person's karma. The important thing is to live in a way that your mind is at peace and your heart is open. Every night before going to sleep, you can try spending a few minutes looking back at your day and asking yourself, "Today, I had a full meal, peaceful sleep, someone to talk to." Is that enough? You will find that happiness is not actually far away. It lies right in that simplicity. If you know trituk, every day is a precious day. The Buddha's teachings are never outdated because human suffering has always been the same through the ages. We suffer because we don't know enough, because we keep searching for more. But when we realize that we just need to let go of comparison, just need to be grateful and appreciate the present, we have taken a long step on the path to peace. Try tuk does not make us lazy or stop striving, but helps us understand that the true value of life lies not in the outer shell, but in the inner experience. So, my friend, when you feel restless, remember the teacher's words in the coffee cup story. The precious thing is not the cup, but the flavor of the coffee. The precious thing is not fame or gain, but your very life, lived with simple things, yet full of love. The person who knows Tri Tuk is truly the wealthiest. You see, living with contentment means having everything. Happiness is not far away. It is present in the very moment you know how to stop and smile at what you have. A person with Tri Tuk has a peaceful mind, and a person with a peaceful mind has a peaceful life. And when life is peaceful, nothing can make us worry. My dear friend, in the hustle and bustle of life, have you ever wondered why sometimes you put in so much effort, yet your heart still feels restless and empty? We constantly chase after fame, money, and relationships, but the more we run, the more tired we become. Sometimes we realize that we seem to have forgotten something very important. What remains deep in our souls is the desire to be loved, to live kindly, and to see goodness spread. But the reality of today's society makes people increasingly close off their hearts. They fear being taken advantage of, fear betrayal, fear giving without receiving anything in return. This fear makes the goodness in us gradually fragile. And then we fall into the suffering of indifference, of loneliness, even in our closest relationships. The Buddha taught about karma as an essential law. Every good or bad action we create sows a seed in our minds. That seed never disappears. It lies dormant, waiting for the right conditions to sprout and bear fruit. If we sow seeds of compassion and sharing, sweet fruits will return one day. Conversely, if we sow seeds of selfishness and calculation, bitter fruits cannot be avoided. People often wonder why they do good deeds, but don't see any reward. In reality, karma is not an immediate exchange, but the ripening of seeds. Imagine sowing a rice seed in a field. You cannot expect golden rice ears tomorrow. There must be sun, rain, time, and fertile soil for the seed to grow into a plant, bear flowers, and produce grains. Goodness is the same. It needs to be sown, nurtured, and watered daily to become a strong green tree in the soul. There is a small but profound story. One morning, on a crowded bus, An Phúc, an ordinary office worker, stood squeezed among the people. When the bus stopped at a station, an elderly woman with a hunched back boarded, stumbling amidst the crowd. Without hesitation, he quickly stood up and offered his seat to her. This action was not grand, but it was enough to make the old woman's eyes light up with gratitude. The bus continued. An Phúc held on to the handrail, feeling an unusual lightness in his heart. As he approached his stop and prepared to get off, a passenger behind him suddenly called out, handing him his wallet that had just fallen on the floor. If it weren't for that person, he might have lost a large sum of money. In that moment, he suddenly realized that kindness is like a seed sown that will return. Sometimes not directly, but it will surely respond in the most unexpected way. An Fuch's story reminds us of an important truth. Giving is not about expecting to receive, but karma always operates silently. Living kindly is not just for others' happiness, but to make our own minds clear and light. When we do good, it's like moonlight shining into our souls, dispelling the darkness of selfishness and greed. That light not only illuminates others, but also warms our own hearts. In Buddhist teachings, cultivating compassion and performing good deeds are considered the foundation for achieving peace. A person may be materially wealthy, but if they live selfishly and closed off, their heart remains impoverished. Conversely, a person who may not be well off, but knows to share and love has an infinitely rich soul. Try to recall times you helped someone, even with a small act like yielding the right of way, smiling at a stranger, or comforting a friend in sadness. At that moment, didn't you feel your heart lighten, happier, and life seem warmer? That is the sweet fruit of goodness. It comes in the very moment we give. The problem is that many people are afraid to give because they think they will be at a disadvantage. But in fact, giving does not make us lose. It makes our hearts richer. Imagine a candle. When it lights other candles, it does not lose its own light. On the contrary, the light becomes even more brilliant. Goodness is the same. When it spreads, it does not diminish, but multiplies. And when the soul is illuminated, the darkness of worries and suffering will naturally disappear. In a competitive life, sometimes we see injustice, we see evil triumph, and goodness seemingly forgotten. But my friend, karma never misses anything. Those who sow evil will sooner or later reap bitter fruits. Those who sow good will surely receive good results. It may not be immediate, but it is never lost. As the Buddha once taught, karma follows us like a shadow. Therefore, when we live virtuously, even if no one knows or praises us, good karma still accumulates silently. Then, one day, when needed, it will become a solid support for us to overcome difficulties. So, how do we cultivate goodness in daily life? It's simple. Start with the smallest things. Smile at your loved ones instead of being grumpy. Express sincere thanks when someone helps you. Be willing to yield a little to maintain harmony. Know how to share with those less fortunate than yourself. Each such action is like a drop of water, contributing to a clear stream that nourishes the soul. Each evening, before going to sleep, you can close your eyes and ask yourself, have I done any good deeds today? It may be a very small act, but if you sow a good seed every day, your soul will soon become a lush green garden. And when the heart is good, life will naturally be peaceful. Giving without expecting anything in return is the highest realm of goodness, because then we give with freedom, no longer bound by desires or expectations. And it is at that moment that true happiness arises, because happiness is not when we receive a lot, but when we know how to share, how to spread love. My dear friend, remember that every good deed you do, however small, is like moonlight shining, capable of illuminating an entire night sky. And that moonlight will one day return to illuminate you. Kindness is the key that opens peace and dispels worries. Those who sow good hearts will sooner or later reap happiness. Everyone in life will have moments when they feel as if everything has closed before their eyes. Some collapse in those failures and carry the pain for the rest of their lives. But there are also those who, thanks to such experiences, learn to stand up, view life with different eyes, and then realize that failure is not an end, but merely a turning point that opens a new path. Have you ever sat silently in the dark, sighing as you thought about your losses? Perhaps it was a job you poured your heart into, only to see it suddenly collapse. A love you thought would last a lifetime, only to become a memory. Or a dream you nurtured for years, only to have it fade away midway. These thoughts grieve us, but it is precisely in these moments that we have the opportunity to change our perspective and embark on a new journey of growth. The Buddha once taught that life is impermanent. All phenomena are constantly changing. Nothing remains perfectly intact forever. Impermanence is not only the operating law of the universe, but also a reminder for us to learn to view life with more tolerance and gentleness. When one door closes, we often stand endlessly before that door, feeling tormented, suffering, and regretting, without realizing that around us there are still many other paths. If you change your perspective, you will see that failure is not an end, but an opportunity to start a new chapter. The Lin Buddhist channel wants to tell you the story of a man named Dung. He once opened a small restaurant in the city. In the beginning, customers came and went bustlingly. Dung happily thought he had found a stable path for his life, but after only a few years, his restaurant faced fierce competition, rising costs, and dwindling customers. Finally, he had to close it down. During that time, Dung sank into sadness. The feeling of failure made him lose faith in himself. He wondered why life was so cruel, why his efforts and dedication were swept away in an instant. He withdrew, suffering many sleepless nights, his heart heavy, as if carrying the entire sky. But then, on a trip back to his mother's hometown, he accidentally saw a vacant plot of land behind the house. The idea of growing organic vegetables suddenly sparked in his mind. Initially, it was just for his family. Gradually, he expanded, incorporating new organic farming techniques. Surprisingly, his vegetables were sought after by many people because they were both safe and delicious. From a failure, he found another path, more peaceful and sustainable. Dung realized that if his restaurant hadn't closed back then, he probably would never have found joy in this lush green garden. When one door closes, another truly opens. The important thing was that he was willing to change his perspective, not letting failure extinguish his faith, but seeing it as an opportunity to start over. Through that story, we see that suffering does not come from external events, but from how we perceive them. Others see failure as an end. But those who know how to change their perspective will see it as an opportunity to learn and grow. The Buddha once taught that among the myriad phenomena, nothing is constant. What comes together arises, and what disperses ceases. Understanding impermanence, the mind will naturally find peace. Indeed, when we are less attached to a single outcome, we will feel our hearts lighten. Black or white, good or bad, sometimes only differ in perspective. In daily life, there are times when we only focus on pain and forget the happiness that is still present around us. Someone who loses a job might think their life is over. But if they view it as an opportunity, they will learn a new skill, opening up a new path. Someone who goes through a broken relationship might suffer to the extreme, but then perhaps that is a door for them to meet a more sincere love or find their true self in inner peace. The truth is, when we change our perspective, circumstances also change. It's like looking at the moon. Some see the crescent moon and feel sad, but others see it as the beginning of a new full cycle. So the moon is not at fault. Only each person's perspective creates different emotions. To practice this, we need to learn to stop and observe our minds. When an event occurs, instead of rushing to blame or grieve, try asking, is this event entirely bad? Is it possible that in this loss there is also a gain? Could this be a lesson for me to grow? Buddhist teachings never tell us to escape reality, but only to look at reality with clear eyes. Impermanence is the key to overcoming suffering, because when we know that nothing lasts forever, we will no longer stubbornly cling to things that are bound to change. A useful practice is that whenever you encounter difficulty, try taking a deep breath and exhaling slowly. In that moment, tell yourself, everything will pass. Today's failure may be tomorrow's beginning. When the mind is at peace, you will see more clearly the opportunities hidden in adversity. Just as a seed can only sprout when its hard shell is broken, humans only grow when they embrace challenges and view them with new light. There's a wonderful saying, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. A person who knows how to look from multiple perspectives will see that life is not entirely dark, nor entirely brilliant, but a blend of all shades. From that, they live more lightly, not letting a single event shake their entire faith. Because who knows? A failure today might just be fertile ground for sowing seeds for the future. With just a different perspective, darkness can become light. So instead of asking, why am I suffering? Try asking, what is this suffering teaching me? Instead of blaming life, try being grateful that life has given you an opportunity to learn a new lesson. Looking at it that way, you will feel your heart lighten considerably. Living in impermanence, we don't need to try to grasp everything. We just need to cherish each moment. When we know that change is natural, we will welcome it with a calm smile instead of tears of despair. Ultimately, what's important is not how many challenges life throws at us, but how we choose to perceive them. With the same event, if we look with pessimistic eyes, we will see the whole world collapse. But if we look with eyes of understanding and faith, we will see opportunities awaiting. Whether life is beautiful or ugly, light or heavy, it all depends on how we choose to perceive it. And once we learn how to change our perspective, we will live more lightly in the face of impermanence. Perhaps all of us have often wondered why life is filled with so much suffering. Some suffer from the struggle for food, clothing, and money, toiling for years, yet never having enough. Some suffer from broken relationships, their hearts wounded and unsure when they will heal. Some suffer from illness, battling daily with physical weariness. Others suffer from invisible pressures from work, from family expectations, from comparisons with others. Suffering is present everywhere, in every corner of life, and it was the Buddha himself, upon enlightenment, who first affirmed the truth of suffering. Life is suffering is the first noble truth he left for us. But what is precious is that the Buddha did not stop at pointing out the truth that life is suffering. He also gave us the path to understand suffering, transform suffering, and ultimately transcend suffering. Suffering is not something to fear or avoid, but precisely an opportunity for us to temper our courage, to train our will. Like fire testing gold, suffering is a test to reveal how great our inner strength is. Without hardships, perhaps we would forever remain barren land that has never been tilled. But when we face and overcome them, we become fertile ground, ready for good trees to grow. In the scriptures, the Buddha taught that karma operates like a shadow following a form. What we bear today is largely the result of karma sown previously, perhaps in this life, or perhaps in many past lives. Suffering, therefore, is not just punishment, but also a lesson for us to understand and correct ourselves. Once we understand this, we will no longer blame life, but learn to face suffering with courage. Face it so as not to be overwhelmed, so that suffering becomes the material that forges our own resilience. The story of the inventor Thomas Edison has probably been heard by everyone, yet it remains inspiring every time it is recounted. People often admire him as a genius with great inventions that changed the world. But Edison once said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Behind the glory of a genius are countless failures that, if he hadn't persevered, he would never have achieved success. It is said that before finding the suitable filament for the light bulb, he experimented and failed thousands of times. When asked if he ever felt discouraged after so many failures, Edison smiled and replied that he did not consider them failures, but simply 1,000 ways that didn't work. It was that attitude, that indomitable will, that made Edison a genius forged from hardship. But the Lin Ung Buddhist channel wants you to hear a more relatable story. The story of an ordinary woman named Thu. Ms. Thu lost her parents at a young age, her childhood lacking love and support. From the age of 15, she had to struggle to make a living. Her life was a series of arduous days, sometimes washing dishes at a restaurant, sometimes selling lottery tickets on the street. But deep in her heart, she always had a small dream: to make delicious bread with her own hands and to have a small shop of her own. Then one day, she saved up every meager penny, bought an old pushcart, and started selling bread on a street corner. In the early days, she encountered all sorts of difficulties. Sometimes she was chased away while selling, or had her sidewalk space encroached upon. Sometimes customers complained that the bread was dry or the filling wasn't tasty. Sometimes in the rain, she stood shivering, her bread cart soaked, with no one stopping to buy. There were times she felt discouraged and wanted to give up. But then, thinking of the long path she had walked, thinking of the tears of her orphaned childhood, she told herself she couldn't give up. She patiently learned, researched new recipes, added a little more fragrant butter, a little more sauce, baked the bread softer. Gradually, customers began to praise its taste and returned for more. From a small pushcart, she was able to open a more spacious stall. Today, her bread shop is one of the familiar addresses in the neighborhood. Everyone mentions her with admiration. What made Ms. Thu successful was not her starting point, but her willpower to overcome suffering. If she had given up in the face of difficulties back then, she would probably still be an arduous woman working for others. But thanks to her resilient will, she transformed her suffering into motivation to rise up. That story reminds us that suffering does not come to destroy us, but to temper our resilience. Just as a stone is smoothed by the flowing water, humans are also forged into strength by suffering. In reality, many people often mistakenly believe that happiness is when we no longer experience any suffering. But the Buddha taught that suffering is an inseparable part of life. The important thing is whether we know how to transform it into strength. Those who avoid suffering are like young birds, always wanting to hide in their nests, never learning how to spread their wings and fly far. Only when we dare to face, dare to walk through storms, do we truly mature. Because willpower is not born from days of ease, but forged in the fire of challenge. So, what must we do to face suffering? First, accept it as a natural part of life. Every time you encounter difficulty, remind yourself that this is not a punishment, but a lesson. Thanks to suffering, we learn patience, perseverance, and empathy. When you go through difficult days, you will appreciate peaceful days more. When you have experienced scarcity, you will share more when you have plenty. Thus, suffering is also our teacher. Next, cultivate a clear perspective in the spirit of impermanence. Understand that all suffering will pass. Nothing lasts forever. Night will eventually give way to dawn, and rain will cease to make way for a clear sky. If we believe in this law, we will not despair, knowing that suffering is just a phase in the journey. Once we overcome it, we will find ourselves stronger than ever. And above all, cultivate faith in karma. Your efforts today, however small, will bear fruit. Believe that every drop of sweat, every tear you wipe away, is a seed for future success. Like Edison, like Ms. Thu, they all paid a price in hardship, but it was their perseverance that led them to achieve success. A person with strong will never lets suffering defeat them, but always rises from where they fall. There's a Vietnamese proverb: fire tests gold, hardship tests strength. If gold doesn't go through fire, how do we know it's real gold? If a person doesn't go through hardship, how do we know how strong they are? So, don't be afraid of suffering, and don't run from it. Let suffering become the fire that tempers you into steel. And when your will is forged, you will feel more confident, more steadfast in the face of life's storms. Finally, the Lin Ung Buddhist channel wants to remind you not to see suffering as an enemy, but as a companion. Though harsh, it helps us grow. Though bitter, it makes us appreciate sweetness. Though arduous, it teaches us the strength of will. And when you understand this, you will see that suffering is no longer scary, but becomes a source of energy that helps you go further on life's path. Suffering is not meant to extinguish you, but to temper you. My dear friend, perhaps in this life, what causes many people the most torment is the judging eyes of others. We often live with the feeling that we must be recognized, must be praised, to feel that we have value. But the more we chase after that, the heavier our hearts become, because the eyes of the world are myriad. Some praise, some criticize, some support, others slander. Thus, we get caught in the spiral of praise and blame, gradually losing our freedom and the inherent serenity of our souls. How many times have you been tired of living to please others, forgetting that you yourself are the one bearing all those worries? Sometimes, just a fleeting word, an unintentional glance, can make us lie awake for many nights, asking ourselves if we are good enough. This suffering seems small, but is very deep, because it erodes self-confidence, making us constantly wear masks and live in fear of criticism. The Buddha once taught that the root of suffering is attachment. When we are too attached to praise or afraid of criticism, we have handed over the ownership of our happiness to others. In reality, praise or blame are just fleeting sounds, like wind blowing past our ears, impossible to grasp, impossible to hold. If we cling to them, we ourselves will suffer. In the Four Noble Truths, he clearly stated, life is suffering because we wish for everything to go our way, including wishing others would always look at us favorably. But that is impermanent and can never be achieved. Understanding the law of cause and effect, we will see that living authentically, living virtuously, will naturally sow good seeds. Whether others recognize us or not depends on karmic conditions and cannot be forced. A flower blooming deep in the forest, unpraised by anyone, still emits its fragrance, because the nature of a flower is to bloom and be fragrant, not to await admiration. If humans know how to live like a flower, they will naturally be at peace and free, not bound by invisible strings called judgment. There is a small but meaningful story I want to share with you about Ngok. Ngok, a 9th grade girl, had a passion for painting since childhood. Every time she held a brush, she felt her heart calm, and all worries seemed to disappear. However, at school, her friends often mocked her. Who paints these days? There's no future in it. These words disheartened Ngok. At times, she was so sad she wanted to give up her paintbrush, thinking she was on the wrong path. But then one day, as she sat looking at a wild flower growing by the roadside, she suddenly realized that a flower doesn't need anyone's recognition to bloom. It blooms simply because that is its nature. Ngok smiled and asked herself, why do I paint? For others or for myself? From that moment, she decided to paint for her own heart, no longer letting criticism sway her. Gradually, her paintings not only made herself happy, but also touched many hearts. A teacher was moved when she saw a pure and loving soul in Ngok's paintings. A classmate who once criticized her even came to ask her to paint a picture for his mother. It was when she stopped chasing recognition that recognition naturally came to her. But that was no longer important. What was important was that Ngok had found peace in her soul, living authentically with herself. Don't you see? When we live like a flower, we don't need to try to please anyone. We just need to shine with our inherent fragrance and color. That natural beauty does not depend on praise or blame. Similarly, in life, if we constantly live to chase others' evaluations, it's like tying ourselves with invisible ropes. Today, people praise. Tomorrow, they may criticize, and then we are sad or happy, according to each rise and fall. Our hearts, never at peace. But if we know how to return to ourselves, how to live truly with our souls, then praise and blame are just like clouds drifting across the sky, coming and going, without leaving a trace. Isn't that why the ancients said, A virtuous person naturally radiates fragrance. A kind, sincere person, without boasting, will still spread goodness around them. In daily life practice, perhaps you should start with small things. When doing something, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Because of what others will think, or because this is truly something that makes me feel at peace. If it brings you peace, then continue, no matter how much the world may chatter. When someone mocks you, practice breathing deeply, smile, and remind yourself, I am a flower, not someone else's shadow. You can try dedicating time each day to your hobbies, even if it's just 15 minutes, but do it with your whole heart. It could be reading a page of a book, tending to a potted plant, writing a few lines in a journal, or simply sitting in silence and breathing. When you allow yourself to live authentically, you will discover freedom, a kind of happiness that cannot be taken away by any judging eyes. The Buddha once advised that humans suffer because they often compare. They feel sad when others are praised, and they feel inferior when criticized. But in truth, no two people are alike. Everyone has their own path, their own karmic conditions. If we keep comparing, it's like using someone else's measuring stick to measure ourselves. The result can only be wrong. A rose cannot be compared to a lotus. A chrysanthemum cannot be compared to an orchid. Each type of flower has its own fragrance and color. Each has irreplaceable value. Humans are the same. You are uniquely you, never to be repeated. So why suffer because of others' opinions, when the most important thing is to live true to your own soul? It's interesting that the more we cling to the ego, the smaller we feel. The more we let go of the ego, the larger we feel. Because when the ego dominates, we only see our own benefit. But when we let go of it, our hearts open up. We can embrace others, and the happiness of others also becomes our joy. That is true freedom, a great happiness that nothing can compare to. Therefore, letting go of the ego does not mean humbling ourselves. It does not mean becoming weak or losing out. On the contrary, it is a great strength, a clear wisdom that helps us live in harmony and peace amidst the flow of life. When there is no longer a narrow ego, we will feel as vast as the sky, as light as a floating cloud. If each night before going to sleep, we try to remind ourselves a simple sentence, today, I lived less for my ego than yesterday, didn't I? Just a small change, but day by day, it will become a guiding light, helping us find peace in our hearts. And like An Nam's story, on that rainy day, sometimes just a small act, a moment of thinking of others, we find profound warmth. That is the moment we escape our small ego to touch a vast happiness. Letting go of the ego and returning to oneself is the shortest path to finding freedom and peace. Have you ever wondered why each night before going to sleep, even after lying down and closing your eyes, your mind is still restless, still holding on to worries you haven't released? Some think about unfinished work, others toss and turn over a hurtful word. Some are haunted by past failures or afraid of the future. These worries make sleep heavy. The next morning, you wake up feeling gloomy and tired. In reality, life already has enough pressures. But what adds to our suffering is that we don't know how to put things down. If we look back at the long journey we have taken together in this series of reflections, we will realize a common point. Whether it's work pressure, emotional wounds, resentment in our hearts, or petty jealousy, all are burdens we carry on our shoulders. Each one is like a stone. The more we carry, the heavier our steps become. The more we cling, the more we hurt. The Buddha taught that the deep root cause of all suffering is attachment. When we cling to the past, cling to the ego, cling to the desire for everything to go our way, then suffering will never end. This is precisely the Four Noble Truths, in which he clearly states that life is suffering. The cause of suffering is craving and attachment, and the path to liberation from suffering is letting go and following the Eightfold Path. Imagine a lake, though. When the surface of the lake is rippled and the moonlight cannot reflect clearly. But when the water is still, the moon's reflection appears completely, bright and shimmering. The human mind is the same. When it is full of afflictions, resentment, and struggles, the light of wisdom and compassion cannot manifest clearly. Only when we know how to let go, how to allow the mind to return to stillness, can we see the shining light of peace. There is a small story I want to tell you. One evening, after a tiring day at work, Ms. Hoa returned home. She carried many worries in her heart: unfinished work, disagreements with colleagues, and even unresolved family matters. Her mind was like a cramped room full of belongings, so much so that there was no room to breathe. Then, by chance, she heard a Dharma talk, in which there was a sentence: "Let each day pass like a leaf falling peacefully. Let go. Don't hold it in your heart." She sat still, took a deep breath, and released it, imagining she was gradually letting go of each burden. Amazingly, after a few minutes, her mind calmed down, her eyes closed gently. And that night, she had a peaceful sleep, one she hadn't had in a long time. From Ms. Hoa's story, we understand that peace is not something far away. It lies right in each breath. In each moment, we are willing to release a part of our attachment. Tonight, as you sit here listening, you can also try to do the same. Inhale, recognizing you are inhaling. Exhale, recognizing you are exhaling. In that breath, there is no past, no future, only the present moment. And the present is where life truly abounds, where you can truly smile at yourself. People often say that letting go means losing, but in reality, letting go is not losing, but rediscovering. When we let go of pressure, we rediscover relaxation. When we let go of the past, we rediscover the present. When we let go of narrow-mindedness, we rediscover a compassionate heart. When we let go of the ego, we rediscover boundless freedom. All these are journeys back to oneself, to live a light and peaceful life. In the Dhammapada, there is a verse: "A peaceful mind leads to a joyful life. A restless mind leads to suffering." So what needs to change is not the external world, but our inner self. When the mind is at peace, all circumstances become more pleasant. Conversely, when the mind is restless, no matter how good the circumstances, we still feel dissatisfied. Therefore, the Lin Ung Buddhist channel invites you each evening before going to sleep to give yourself a few minutes to settle down. You don't need to do anything profound. just listen to a teaching of the Buddha, or simply sit quietly and breathe gently, so that your soul becomes like a calm lake, reflecting the moonlight of compassion. At that time, all worries and suffering will naturally disappear, and you will find serenity, lightness, and a truly peaceful sleep. The journey of letting go is not a matter of a day or two, but if each evening we sow a seed of peace in our hearts, gradually the garden of our soul will blossom. And when the flower of peace has bloomed, you will find that this life is inherently beautiful, worth living, and full of love. Closing here, I send you a sincere wish. May you, each evening, listening to the Buddha's teachings, lighten your heart, dispel worries, and fall into sleep like a child, without worries or burdens, so that when you wake up tomorrow morning, you will have a new day, peaceful, full of energy and faith. Peace has never truly been far away. It lies right in every breath you take.